Open your fridge for a second. It hums. It's always cold. And it quietly keeps your entire life running. Your food, your leftovers, your drinks, your routine. But for almost all of human history, a home refrigerator didn't exist. So here's the real question. How did people keep food from spoiling before cold lived in the kitchen? And how did we go from ice blocks and wooden boxes to a sealed machine that runs day and night in nearly every home on Earth? In this reconstruction, we're going to travel through eras and places to see what really happened before the first home refrigerator and how it finally arrived. Welcome. The strangest fact, fridges are newer than they feel. The first thing you need to understand is simple. The refrigerator feels ancient, but the everyday home fridge is a modern invention. Humans have stored food for thousands of years. We built cities, ran empires, crossed oceans, and yet, for almost all that time, most homes had no machine that could make cold on demand. There were solutions, many of them clever. Some were seasonal, some were expensive, and some were surprisingly brutal. Because before refrigerators, there was one rule. You preserved what you could, or you lost it. And that changes everything. Before the fridge, preservation was survival. Come back with me to a kitchen with no electricity, no humming motor, no sealed door, no reliable cold. Food was a ticking clock, so people built entire cultures around preservation. They dried meat and fish in the sun and wind. They salted and smoked foods to slow decay. They fermented vegetables, dairy, grains. They stored roots in cool earth. They used oil, sugar, vinegar. Every method had a price: time, labor, taste, and risk. In many places, the daily routine wasn't cook what you want. It was eat what will survive. And if you were poor, the margin was thin. The first cold tech: ice, cellars, and winter. Now imagine you want cold without a refrigerator. Your first option is nature. In colder climates, winter itself became technology. People built cellars and buried storage rooms under houses. Thick stone, earth insulation, stable temperatures. In some regions, ice was harvested from lakes in winter, stored in insulated pits, and used months later. But notice the limitation. This kind of cold wasn't equal. If you lived near ice, you had an advantage. If you had a cellar, you had an advantage. If you had money, you had options. And that created a huge divide between classes. The icebox, a fridge that didn't make ice. Now we reach the direct ancestor of the home refrigerator, the icebox. The icebox was basically a wooden cabinet, insulated with compartments. You placed a large block of ice inside. Cold air sank. Food stayed cooler than the room. It sounds simple, and it was, but it depended on an entire ecosystem. Someone had to harvest ice, store it, transport it, deliver it. So in many cities, an iceman became part of normal life. And in some neighborhoods, ice delivery was routine. In others, it was a luxury. The icebox brought cold into the home, but it still couldn't create cold. The hidden world behind a block of ice. Here's what people forget. That block of ice wasn't free cold. It was logistics, it was labor, it was an industry. Ice was cut from frozen lakes with saws and hooks. Stored in ice houses, packed with insulation like sawdust, shipped by cart and later by rail. And the closer you lived to this supply chain, the more modern your kitchen became. But the icebox had problems. Ice melted, water leaked, food still spoiled, and it was never truly consistent. So inventors started chasing the next step, a machine that makes cold by itself. The science that changed everything: artificial refrigeration. Artificial refrigeration didn't begin in kitchens. It began in industry, breweries, meatpacking, ships, warehouses. Businesses had money to invest in big, complex machines. And they had one obsession: control temperature. Engineers experimented with compression systems and chemical refrigerants. And slowly, refrigeration became something you could build, not just harvest. But bringing this into a home was another problem entirely. It had to be smaller, safer, affordable, and easy to use, which at the time, it wasn't. The first home refrigerators: big, expensive, and scary. The first home refrigerators were not friendly. They were heavy, loud, and expensive. Some had exposed mechanisms. Some used refrigerants that could be dangerous if leaked. And early models weren't standardized. Owning one was like owning a brand new experimental machine. But the promise was insane. Cold on demand. No ice deliveries, No melting blocks, more control, less spoilage. If you could afford it, it felt like living in the future. The key moment when fridges became safe for families. To become universal, the refrigerator needed a turning point. Not just technical, cultural. Families needed to trust it. They needed it to be quiet, clean, sealed. They needed it to fit in a kitchen. They needed it to stop feeling like a machine and start feeling like furniture. This is when design changes matter. Enclosed compressors, better insulation, better temperature control, and crucially, safer refrigerants and safety standards. Because a device that runs inside your home can't feel like a risk the moment it becomes normal. Once the home refrigerator becomes normal, everything shifts. Shopping changes. Instead of buying daily, you can buy weekly. You can store leftovers safely. You can keep milk longer. You can keep meat longer. Entire industries reorganize around the fact that homes can store cold. Grocery stores expand. Frozen foods appear. Distribution networks change. And the refrigerator quietly becomes one of the most powerful machines in the modern home. Why it feels inevitable now. Here's the strange part. Once you live with a fridge, it feels inevitable. As if kitchens were always supposed to have one. But in reality, it's a chain of events. Preservation cultures, ice harvesting, iceboxes, industrial refrigeration, early home machines, safety and design, mass adoption, and every step required technology, and people willing to change habits. The final truth, the fridge didn't just cool food, it changed life. When you put it all together, one thing becomes clear. The home refrigerator didn't just make food colder, it changed how people eat, how people shop, how long food lasts, what kinds of food can exist in a normal kitchen. It changed daily life, and it did it so quietly that we stopped noticing. If you went back in time and walked into a typical kitchen before the first home refrigerator, what would surprise you most? How fast food spoiled? How much work preservation required? Or how much of modern life depends on a quiet cold box in the corner? In the next episode, we can reconstruct another invisible everyday invention, something you use constantly and never stop to think how it came to be.